So, after the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, it feels like everybody got way more information about the system than Nintendo originally revealed, such as the game cartridges being keys instead of actual cartridges that hold your Nintendo Switch 2 games. I can see that being a possibility and the best route because there's no way you're going to be able to get a 50 gigabyte cartridge of that size for the Nintendo Switch 2, so I don't have a problem with that at all. If it enables me to borrow and resell my Nintendo Switch 2 games, then I'm perfectly okay with that. And it seems like the new cartridges will enable people to do that. So I think we're in the clear with all that. But the main thing that people are talking about is the prices of the Nintendo Switch 2 games themselves. Apparently, Mario Kart World will be $80. $80 is a lot of money, considering exactly what a Nintendo Switch 2 game is. It's basically a slightly downgraded PlayStation 4, and the PlayStation 4 released almost 10 years ago. So of course Nintendo still has to catch up in terms of hardware, but this technology is technically new. We've seen PlayStation 4 graphics on the actual system itself, but we've never seen it completely portable besides the handhelds that we got with the Steam Deck, ROG Ally, Legion Go, and other devices like that. Of course, you can buy those devices for around $350 to $700, and sure, you could possibly get an ROG Ally, which has a 1080p screen, 120Hz display with VRR, for possibly cheaper than a Nintendo Switch, but Nintendo is exclusively optimizing games like Cyberpunk 2077 for their new handheld. But honestly, I still feel like $80 is too much for a Nintendo Switch game, especially since we won't be getting the same exact experiences that we get on a PlayStation 5, but we might actually be getting something similar to a PlayStation 5, considering that we're getting games like Final Fantasy Remake, Intergrade, and Split Fiction. Some games featured on the Nintendo Switch 2 are only available on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X. But of course, the reality of it all is at this point, Nintendo is spending probably way more money than they've ever have spent on hardware. The Nintendo Switch 2 is 4K compatible with a 120Hz screen, and apparently it does have VRR with HDR. That is a lot of hardware in a handheld system. Even by today's standards, if you get an ROG Ally for around $350 used, it still won't come with HDR. So there are more features packed into this Nintendo handheld than possibly any other handheld that has come out in recent memory. So paying a premium of $450 for the optimization of Nintendo, I don't think that price is bad at all, but I do think the $80 price tag is a bit too much. I think $70 would be better, but because of the new laws that are passed, prices will go up. So I don't think this exactly has to do with Nintendo themselves. They probably just cranked up the prices of the actual games because they're going to ship those way more than the systems themselves. So Nintendo most likely had a plan to make them $70, similar to Tears of the Kingdom, and most games probably will be $70, but certain titles that have expandable features that most likely will come with free updates, similar to Mario Kart World, that will support the Nintendo Switch Online ecosystem opposed to a single player experience, will most likely be a little more expensive and will also feature probably a Nintendo Switch Online free trial that's a few months. But I've heard other details. It seems like Nintendo Switch 2 is only going to last about 2 hours, which is better than the ROG Ally, but of course it's not better than the $800 ROG Ally X that has an 80 watt hour battery. And regardless of the playtime being 2 hours, which I see as a bit of a disappointment, it's obvious that Nintendo did that to keep the thickness of the system exactly the same and to keep the accessibility at least realistic. Playing a Nintendo Switch 2 is most likely going to feel like playing an iPad mini because the thing is going to be 8 inches, but very thin. And like the accessories I showed on my channel before, there will be a lot of support for different varieties of grips. So most likely it will end up weighing around the same weight as something like a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally at the end of the day. And it's just as tall and wide as those handhelds as well. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to pay $450 plus $50 to $80 each for ports that you most likely already have on different platforms, instead of just waiting for something like an Xbox handheld for a brand new Nintendo Switch 2 that's going to come with Mario Kart World, which is going to be a confirmed $80, just so you can play games that are slightly more optimized than the software technology driven handhelds like the ROG Ally Steam Deck and Legion Go, which can upscale to 4K regardless of optimization, and you don't have to upgrade specific titles on those systems in order to play them on different different handhelds. But yes, the other update that I looked into and wanted to make sure of is the fact that certain update titles will have paid forced included content like the Nintendo camera and the mouse controls. And Nintendo will most likely charge you around $20 for the upgrade, which is basically like certain remastered prices or upgrades, similar to the PlayStation 5, but not very similar to the Xbox, which gives you free updates with their Xbox 360 games, and next generation updates like The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 received. So there are huge titles on these other platforms that got free updates eventually, but it seems like straight away, Nintendo is going to make you pay for a certain amount of updates for these Nintendo Switch 2 editions. But there are certain titles that are being ported over that are going to be free, so that's a good thing. But it's not so good thing because there are confirmed games that you need to pay extra for. And those are the ones that I find to be unfortunate, because Nintendo could have just sold us the upgrade for a certain amount of price instead of just giving us this BS DLC that we're probably not going to play, making the criteria that they add more content for you so you have to pay. Instead of Nintendo trying to make themselves feel better about this upscaling upgrade with an unlocked FPS, which they could have just made into a free update or a certain amount paid for just the update alone and not all this extra DLC that you're forced to buy for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Tears of the Kingdom, which I'm pretty sure Tears of the Kingdom is only like a Google Maps update for some reason. I don't want to pay for that crap. I want to explore the game. Isn't that what Tears of the Kingdom is all about? So making me pay extra for all of these features that I'm probably never going to use, and the only feature that most people are interested in is the 1080p 120Hz display. So yes, it's still an issue that people aren't really talking about, but instead they're talking about the $80 price tag, which I understand. But my concern is, how often are they going to implement these updates to certain games that I've always wanted to play upscaled on the Nintendo Switch, like Doom Eternal, Batman Arkham Knight? Those games are probably not going to receive updates for a very long time, but it does give Nintendo the opportunity to add more content, so that is a good thing. But forcing us to pay for that good thing opposed to just giving us what we want, which is an upscaled higher FPS on that particular title, which is the reason why a lot of other people bought handhelds like the ROG Ally, Steam Deck, and Legion Go, because they wanted those games but with upgraded quality. And some people only want that on the Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo seems to understand this because the system does have higher resolution and a higher refresh rate. But yeah, the $80 price tag is a bit much, but I'm pretty sure that other games are going to be around $50 to $70, so that's okay because games have been $70 for a couple years now. I don't think other companies are going to see Mario Kart World and think to themselves, oh, Nintendo is going to make every single title $80, so I'm going to jump on this wagon as soon as possible. So there is still a debate if it should actually be that price, but we don't know exactly what we're getting with this title. The Direct will most likely clarify a lot of these concerns that people are having and make it known that that price is specific to that game. And they're most likely only cranking up the price by $10 on Mario Kart World to sell that Mario Kart World bundle for $500 with a Nintendo Switch. Like I said before, Nintendo most likely wanted to make the Nintendo Switch $500 guaranteed, so making Mario Kart World $10 extra will almost guarantee people getting that $500 bundle. Once again, Nintendo is kind of forcing our hands, but this is nothing new. This is a very Nintendo thing to do. They make these desperate strategies in order to get the sales that they want, like sparingly stocking their systems in stores. But I feel like Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have a shit ton of stock, and the reason why is because it seems like they need this $500 bundle to sell. This is just a sales strategy. I think because it is the first huge exclusive releasing on the Nintendo Switch 2, they're trying to gauge to see how much people would pay and how quickly they can sell bundles for the Nintendo Switch 2, because it seems like they have a lot of future plans to make specific types of Nintendo Switch 2s with different colors with certain games. So making that game a little more expensive kind of pushes the user to buy an entire system with the game bundled instead of just buying the game for themselves and buying the system for somebody else. Most likely that person splurging will think, I'll just buy a Nintendo Switch 2 for myself because they mentioned that digital borrowing system. But yeah, guys, let me know what you think about the $80 price. I don't think it's as big as people are making it out to be. I think it is a sales strategy to sell their $500 bundle. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Later.